Have you ever witnessed a cow giving birth to a human? If not, watch this interesting shocking story to discover how it happened in a particular African village. The night was cold, and the moon shone brightly over the village of Odiyu. Everything was quiet, except for the soft sound of a woman crying inside a large hut. Abebio sat on the edge of her bed, her face buried in her hands. Tears rolled down her cheeks like raindrops on a leaf. No matter how hard she tried, she could not stop the pain in her heart. Her husband, Uza, stood by the door, watching her with sad eyes. He wanted to say something to make her feel better, but what could he say? For 10 years, they had tried to have a child. For 10 years, nothing had happened. Abebio, Uza finally spoke, his voice low. Please stop crying. We will find a way. Abebio wiped her tears and shook her head. When, Uza? When? The whole village is laughing at me. They say I am a barren woman. Uza clenched his fist. He had heard the whispers too. A woman with no child is like a tree with no fruit, the elders always said. It was an insult that burned deep inside him. Uza stepped outside and sat on a wooden bench, staring at the night sky. His heart felt heavy, as if a great stone was pressing on it. He had done everything, visited medicine men, prayed at the shrine, given offerings to the gods. Yet, his wife's belly remained empty. A soft breeze blew, and Uza turned his gaze to the large wooden pen at the side of their compound. Inside, their animals were asleep except for Orohi, their cow. Orohi was not just any cow. She was huge, with smooth brown skin and deep, dark eyes. There was something strange about her eyes, they looked almost human. As Uza stared at the cow, he sighed deeply. Maybe he and Abebio were cursed. Maybe the gods had abandoned them. Later that night, as Uza lay in bed, unable to sleep, Abebio spoke. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper. Uza. Yes. What if, she paused, as if afraid to say the words. What if we are looking in the wrong place for a child? Uza frowned. What do you mean? Abebio turned her head towards the window. The moonlight made her face look pale, almost ghostly. She was staring at Orohi. There is always a way, she murmured. We just need to be brave enough to take it. A cold shiver ran down Uza's spine. Why was she looking at the cow like that? What was she thinking? Something was wrong. He could feel it. But he had no idea that his wife was about to suggest something unimaginable, something that would shock the entire village. The morning sun rose over the village of Odiyu, painting the sky with soft shades of orange. Women gathered at the stream, washing clothes and chatting in low voices. But today, their voices were louder. They were talking about Abebio. She has been married for 10 years, yet no child, one woman whispered. I heard Uza is thinking of taking another wife, another added. A younger woman laughed. Can you blame him? How can a man remain with a woman who cannot bear him a child? The word spread like wildfire. Soon, the entire village knew about Uza and Abebio's struggles. Even the children sang songs about Abebio, calling her the mother of emptiness. Inside their hut, Abebio sat still, listening to the voices outside. Her hands trembled with anger and shame. She was tired of the whispers, tired of the pity in people's eyes. That night, as Uza ate his meal in silence, Abebio spoke. Her voice was cold, determined. I have found a way, she said. Uza looked up, confused. A way? What do you mean? Abebio's eyes gleamed in the dim candlelight. I know how we can have a child. Uza placed his bowl down, his heartbeat quickening. Abebio, what are you talking about? She pointed towards the wooden pen where Orohi, the cow, stood under the moonlight, her large, dark eyes staring back at them. We will use Orohi, Abebio whispered. Uza's face twisted in shock. What? Have you gone mad? Abebio grabbed his hands. Her eyes burned with desperation. Listen to me. This is the only way. We have tried everything else. The gods have closed my womb, but they did not close Orohi's. We can make her give us a child. User pulled away, his whole body shaking. This was madness. A cow giving birth to a human. Impossible. Wrong. No. I will never do such a thing, he said firmly. Abebio's face darkened. Then prepare yourself, User. Because very soon, you will be forced to take another wife. The elders will demand it. User swallowed hard. He knew she was right. In Odiu village, a man without children was considered cursed. The elders had already started pressuring him. Soon, they would force him to marry another woman. Was this really his only choice? That night, User did not sleep. His mind battled between right and wrong, tradition and desperation. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the laughing faces of the villagers. At midnight, he sat up. Abebio was already awake, staring at him, as if she knew what he was about to say. I will do it, User muttered, his voice hollow. A small smile spread across Abebio's lips. Good. She stood up, took a deep breath, and led him outside. The night was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets had stopped chirping. Orohi stood in the middle of the wooden pen, her large, deep eyes watching them. It was almost as if she understood what was about to happen. And then, in the darkness of the night, something happened, something so unnatural, so horrifying, that it would change their lives forever. The wind howled through the village of Odiu, shaking the trees as if the gods themselves were warning against what was about to happen. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, casting the land in eerie darkness. Inside the wooden pen, Orohi, the cow, stood still, her large, deep eyes glowing in the dim light. There was something strange about those eyes, something unnatural. User's hands were sweaty. His legs felt weak. He knew this was wrong, yet he had already made his choice. Abebio stood beside him, her face filled with determination. Do not be afraid, she whispered. Once this is done, we will finally have a child. User swallowed hard. Every part of him screamed to run, to stop this madness. But then he remembered the villagers laughing at him. He remembered the elders warning him to take another wife. And so, he stepped forward. The next day, the village was as lively as ever. Women fetched water, men prepared their farmlands, and children played in the dusty roads. No one knew what had happened the night before. But inside User and Abebio's compound, something had changed. Orohi stood in her pen, breathing heavily. She looked weaker, her body shaking slightly. User and Abebio watched her closely, their hearts pounding. Do you think it worked? User asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Abebio nodded slowly. We will find out soon enough. Days passed. Then weeks. And then, something strange happened. Orohi's belly began to grow. At first, User and Abebio kept their secret to themselves. But as the days went by, the villagers began to notice. Your cow looks sick, an old woman commented as she passed by. Another man frowned. No, not sick. She looks pregnant. Pregnant. The word sent chills down User's spine. How could a cow be pregnant without a bull? Whisper spread through the village. The people of Odiu began to gather near User's compound, staring at Orohi with wide eyes. How is this possible? They murmured. Where is the bull that got her pregnant? But no one had an answer. Abebio, however, was unshaken. She knew the truth. And soon, the entire village would know it too. One evening, an old man named Baba Omenka came to visit User. Baba Omenka was the oldest man in the village, known for his wisdom. He had seen many strange things in his lifetime, but this was something else. He walked slowly into the compound, his eyes locked on Orohi. The moment he saw the cow, his face darkened. This is not natural, Baba Omenka said, his voice firm. Tell me, User, what have you done? User's throat went dry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Baba Omenka turned to Abebio. And you, woman, What kind of evil have you brought into this house? Abebio lifted her chin. This is not evil, Baba Omenka. This is a miracle. The old man shook his head. No. This is a curse. Silence fell over the compound. Baba Omenka took a deep breath. Listen to me, both of you. If a cow births a human, the gods will not be pleased. You still have time to stop this before it is too late. But Abebio laughed. Stop what, Baba? The child is already on the way. The old man's eyes filled with sorrow. He turned to User. You have brought something unnatural into this world. Be prepared to face the consequences. Then, without another word, Baba Omenka left. That night, as the wind howled through the village, Orohi let out a loud, painful cry. User and Abebio rushed outside and gasped. The cow was in labor. Her body trembled, her eyes rolling back as she groaned in pain. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. User's hands shook. Abebio, what have we done? But Abebio's eyes were filled with excitement. Our child is coming. She turned to User with a smile. It is time. The night sky was dark, the moon hidden behind thick clouds. The air was heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, a terrible cry shattered the silence. User and Abebio rushed to the wooden pen, their hearts pounding. Arohi, the cow, was in labor. Her body trembled, her legs weak. Sweat dripped from her thick brown skin, her large eyes rolling wildly in pain. Abebio's face was filled with excitement. Yes. Yes. It is happening. But User felt something was wrong. This was not a normal birth. Arohi let out another deep, painful groan. Her stomach twisted in strange ways, and suddenly, the villagers heard the sound. A baby's cry. Word spread through the village like wildfire. A cow was giving birth to a human. People gathered outside User's compound, whispering, gasping, wondering. Some came out of curiosity, others out of fear. Meanwhile, User did something that shocked even Abebio. He ran to call a doctor. Are you mad? Abebio shouted. No one must know about this. But User ignored her. Something inside him told him that this was beyond him, beyond Abebio. He needed someone who understood the body, someone who could explain this madness. Minutes later, Dr. Okofor, the village doctor, arrived. He was an elderly man, wise and respected, with many years of experience in childbirth. But he had never delivered a child from a cow. When he stepped into the wooden pen and saw Arohi groaning in pain, his face turned pale. This is impossible, he whispered. This is not the work of man. This is something else. Arohi's body jerked as another loud cry echoed from her belly. Something was moving inside her. Dr. Okofor stepped forward, sweat forming on his forehead. He had delivered hundreds of babies in his lifetime, but nothing like this. Then, with one final painful push, the baby came out. But it was not an ordinary baby. It was a human child, covered in thick mucus, its skin warm and soft. The villagers who had gathered outside screamed in shock. A cow had given birth to a human. Dr. Okofor stumbled backward, his hands shaking. This is unnatural. User and Abebio, however, stared at the baby with wide eyes. The child was perfect. A beautiful, healthy baby boy. Their son. Abebio took the child in her arms, tears rolling down her face. We did it, User. We finally have a child. But User did not smile. He felt sick. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. The villagers outside the compound whispered in fear. This was an abomination. This child is cursed, one man muttered. No human can come from a cow, another woman said. This is the work of dark magic. Baba Omenka, the wise old man, stepped forward. His face was filled with sorrow. I warned you, he said, looking straight at User. But you did not listen. User could not speak. He could only stare at the baby in Abebio's arms. It looked human. It cried like a human. But deep inside, User knew the truth. This child was not normal. And soon, they would all see why. That night, after the villagers had left and the whispers had died down, User and Abebio sat inside their hut, staring at their new baby. Abebio was happy, singing softly as she rocked the child in her arms. But User could not sleep. He felt uneasy. Then, it happened. The baby, who had been peacefully sleeping, suddenly opened its eyes. User gasped. The child's eyes were not normal. They were large, dark, and looked exactly like Orohi's. User's heart pounded in his chest. Abebio, look at his eyes. Abebio glanced down and frowned. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on her lips. She held the baby closer and whispered, "He is perfect." But User did not feel the same. Because deep in his heart, he knew. This was only the beginning. The sun rose slowly over the village of Odiu, but inside User's hut, darkness filled his heart. He sat on the wooden floor, staring at his newborn son. The child looked normal, except for his eyes. They were large, dark, and deep, just like Orohi's. User swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he reached out to touch the baby's tiny fingers. The skin was warm, soft, but something felt off. Abebio smiled as she held the baby. "Isn't he beautiful?" she whispered. User did not answer. He was too afraid to speak. Then, the baby did something that sent chills down User's spine. It smiled. But not a normal baby smile. This smile was too wide, too knowing, as if the child understood everything. User's breath caught in his throat. A newborn should not smile like that. Outside, Orohi lay in her wooden pen, breathing heavily. She was weak, too weak. Her body trembled, her legs barely holding her up. The villagers who had gathered outside stared at the cow in fear. "She is dying," someone whispered. Boba Omenka, the village elder, stepped forward. His wise eyes scanned the cow's shaking body. He sighed deeply. "This is a sign," he said. "Orohi has given her life to bring something unnatural into this world. And now, she must pay the price." User heard these words and felt a terrible guilt rise inside him. What had they done? That night, as the moon shone over the village, Orohi let out a final, painful groan, and then she was gone. The great cow, the one who had given them a child, was dead. Days passed. The villagers kept their distance from User's home. No one dared come near the cursed child. Inside, User watched as Abebio cared for the baby. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The child grew too fast. By the end of the first week, he was already the size of a 3-month-old baby. By the end of the second week, he looked 6 months old. And then, one night, as User lay awake, staring at the ceiling, he heard something that froze his blood. A voice. Soft, small, but clear. "Father." User sat up so fast his heart nearly stopped. He turned to where the baby lay in the small basket. The child was sitting up, staring straight at him. User gasped. "Abebio, the baby." But Abebio only smiled. "Yes, my love. Our son can talk." User's body went cold. No baby should be able to talk at 2 weeks old. The next morning, User ran to Boba Omenka's hut. His heart was heavy with fear. "Boba," he said, his voice shaking. "My son," he speaks. Boba Omenka's eyes darkened. "It has begun." The old man stood up, grabbed his staff, and walked towards the center of the village. He called out to the people. "My people." Boba Omenka's voice was strong. "We have all seen it. We have all heard it. A cow has birthed a human. And now, this child grows too fast, speaks too soon. This is not normal." Mama spread through the crowd. "This is a curse," one man said. "The gods are angry," another whispered. Boba Omenka turned to User. You must bring the child before the elders. User felt his blood turn to ice. He knew what that meant. The elders would decide whether the child should live or die. Back at home, Abebio rocked the baby in her arms. She heard the villagers. She knew what they were saying. And she would not allow it. "This is my son," she whispered, her eyes wide. "No one will take him from me." The baby looked up at her, his dark cow-like eyes blinking slowly. Then, he smiled. And for the first time, he spoke again. "Mother, protect me." Abebio's lips trembled. She held the baby closer. "I will," she whispered. Even if it meant destroying anyone who tried to take him away. The village square was filled with mamas. Everyone had gathered. The elders sat in a circle, their faces grim. User stood before them, his heart pounding. He had brought his son, as the village demanded. The child, now barely a month old, looked like a 2-year-old. He stood beside his father, his dark, cow-like eyes scanning the crowd. Abebio, however, refused to come. She had hidden inside their hut, clutching the child all night, refusing to let him go. Now, the village had given its verdict. Boba Omenka raised his staff. "This child is not natural," he declared. "We must do what is right before it is too late." The villagers nodded. "The child must be returned to the gods," someone shouted. User's knees felt weak. "Returned," he whispered. Boba Omenka looked at him with sad eyes. "The child must be sacrificed." Back at the hut, Abebio sat in the darkness, rocking her son. She had heard everything. She knew what the village planned. Her grip on the child tightened. "They will not take you," she whispered. Her eyes burned with madness. Then, the child spoke. "Mother, stop them." Abebio's breath caught. The voice was not small anymore. It was deep, unnatural, powerful. Then the child did something horrifying. He stood up. And grew. Right before Abebio's eyes, the child's body stretched, his limbs twisting, his face contorting. His fingers became longer, sharper. His teeth grew into fangs. His skin darkened, rough like an animal's hide. And when he opened his eyes, they glowed red. Abebio gasped. Her son was no longer human. But instead of fear, she smiled. "You are special," she whispered. "You are powerful." The child, no, the creature, tilted its head. Then, in a slow, chilling voice, it whispered, "Let's go, mother." And the hut doors burst open. The villagers had barely finished their discussion when a blood-curdling scream tore through the air. Heads turned. Eyes widened. Then, Abebio appeared. She walked slowly, her hair wired, her eyes burning with madness. And behind her, came the child. But it was not a child anymore. It was something else. Something dark. Something unnatural. The villagers stepped back in horror. What is that?" someone gasped. Boba Omenka's face turned pale. "It is too late," he whispered. The creature smiled. Then, it spoke. "Who wants to take me away now?" A deadly silence filled the air. Then, the creature moved. Fast. Too fast. A man screamed as sharp claws tore through his chest. Another tried to run, but the creature lunged, biting deep into his neck. Blood splattered the ground. The village erupted into chaos. User watched in horror as the creature, the thing that was once his son, slaughtered his people. The air was filled with screams. His legs shook. His heart pounded. Then, he saw her. Abebio stood beside the monster, laughing. Laughing. Something inside User snapped. He knew what he had to do. Grabbing a long, sharp spear, he ran. Straight toward the creature. Toward his own son. The creature turned, too late. User drove the spear deep into its chest. The creature let out a loud, ear-splitting shriek. Its body shook. Its eyes dimmed. Then, it fell. Abebio screamed. No. No. You killed our son. Tears ran down User's face. He had no choice. The monster was never their son. It was a curse. As the creature lay dying, the sky darkened. The wind roared, twisting through the village like a vengeful spirit. Then, a strange light burst from the creature's body. It soared, lifted into the sky, and disappeared. And just like that, it was over. The villagers stood frozen, staring at the lifeless body. Baba Omenka stepped forward, his voice heavy with sorrow. This was never meant to be, he said. When man plays with nature, there are consequences. User fell to his knees, his body shaking with grief. Abebio. She just stood there, silent. Then, without a word, she walked into the forest, and was never seen again. The moral lesson. The village never forgot that night. It became a warning. Some things are not meant to be changed. Some laws of nature must never be broken. Because when humans try to create what is not theirs to create, the result may be something too terrible to control. Thank you for always watching our videos. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share for more interesting stories like this.